Good day. On May 7th, 2025, India launched what it called Operation Sindoor. Operation Sindoor was supposed to be retaliatory strikes against some militant groups in Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. It involved a lot of planes, and it also involved a dogfight in which Pakistan and India exchanged shots at each other. It was a tension-filled period because these two countries, Pakistan and India, are nuclear-armed countries, and conflict between them almost never ending. But this time around, it escalated to the point where a lot of countries were concerned amidst so much political crisis going on in other parts of the world, particularly in Ukraine and Russia, and then also in the Middle East. So there was a lot of concern and a lot of interest when tensions flared up between Pakistan and India. Pakistan and India have had these long-running problems over Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. And this latest incident was sparked when terrorists attacked some Hindu tourists, some tourists from India who went to visit a part of Kashmir. And that terrorist attack led to the death of 25 mainly Indian tourists. This time around, the Indians took matters into their hand and decided to strike through their military assets against what they call specifically to be these militants who perpetrated the act of terrorism. But as the military engagement escalated, it led to serious shootouts between the two of them and a very extensive dogfight, which has been reported to have involved almost 225 planes. And eventually, this skirmish between these two nuclear-armed states was finally brought to, there was a ceasefire announced about 4 or 5 days later. And this ceasefire was because countries of the south of the all the countries of the world all the powers of the world tried to press upon India and Pakistan to de-escalate the tensions. When the dust settled, we started getting a lot of information about what really happened in those dogfights and who shot this and who shot that. And it came out that Pakistan claimed that all was well with them because they shot down they claimed 5 Indian planes. Over time, it has been verified that a number of Indian planes were shot. The Indians weren't particularly happy about telling the world about that their planes were shot down. But it has been determined that Pakistan did shoot down some planes. And it has also been determined, although disputed, that Pakistan took out one Indian air defense system in. And at the heart of all this were Chinese weapons used by the Pakistanis. No doubt, Pakistan also suffered extensive damage to its air bases and some of its um, military facilities because India went full force the next day and attacked quite a number of Pakistani bases. But when the dust settled, something particularly strong emerged from it all. It emerged that the weaponry that Pakistan had used were mainly Chinese-made weapons. They used Chinese-made PL-15 missiles and Chinese-made hypersonic missiles to take out what they purportedly said to take out an Indian S-400 unit. The Chinese weaponry has since the Indian Pakistan skirmish become the main talking points of the whole crisis that just happened. I say this because if we look at the intense furor that has come up from the from the whole event of this whole event, you will see that it is the Chinese who have sort of like gained all the discussions going on now. They are the ones who people are now looking at what were these Chinese weapons that were used? How the efficacy of the Chinese weapons revealed itself in a manner that has caused serious geopolitical concerns. We say this because if you see a lot of the Western media reporting of this event, they have particularly focused not on the skirmish itself, but on the fact that a plane, Chinese planes were mainly the ones used in this skirmish. It has come out that the reason why the Chinese planes were the ones used is because in selling American planes to Pakistan, there was specific provisions that the Pakistanis could never use those American-made planes against the Indians. So when they had an escalation of tension as they just had, it was now the Chinese planes that the Pakistanis used in engaging the Indians. And the efficacy and the success of the Chinese planes in taking out particularly a French Rafale plane. The weapon system used here now was a Chinese J-10C airplane, and they were involved in the dogfights that led to this success, this taking down of Indian planes. Pakistan and China developed there's a plane, the JC-17, that they have as a joint development, the JF-17, that as a joint development between the Chinese and the Pakistanis. But in all, we have not had a situation where, despite the great military buildup of China in recent years, China has not engaged in wars for a long time since they had a 1 month border skirmish with Vietnam. China, in this 20, 30 years that it has grown economically and grown significantly, it has built a military that now is the biggest, boasts the biggest amount of ships in their navy. They now boast a whole array of airframes, including the J-20 Stealth, the J-35 that was recently released, and then they've also built 4 aircraft carriers. They've been building out their military to include a lot of military hardware. And they also have a whole suite of military of drones that they sell to some of the Middle Eastern countries. So China has become a military supplier, but they have not been able to crack into being one of the biggest military sellers of military hardware. That falls to US, which is by far the leading seller of military hardware, the Russians, who come second, France, and even sometimes the South Koreans even sell more military hardware than the Chinese. This is no thanks to the fact that the Chinese don't fight wars. Their weapons have not been used in recent wars, and the efficacy of their weapon systems have not really been tested. But this has all changed with this engagement between between India and Pakistan. For the very first time, the Chinese J-10, I must say the J-10C is actually a very old platform, almost about being retired by the Chinese Air Force. So it saw active military service and it came out flying in flying colors. And this has become the buzz in many, many Western media organizations. You will see reports in Bloomberg, in Financial Times about the efficacy and the success of these Chinese weapon systems. The success of this Chinese almost retired plane it has become an eye-opener. But even then also is the fact that the Chinese claim that they use an hypersonic, the Pakistanis use an hypersonic missile to take out an S-400 air defense system. The S-400, by events in Ukraine, has come to be known as one of the most formidable and most reliable air defense systems in the world. So if a hypersonic weapon or missile from a Chinese-made hypersonic missile can take that system out, it has also serious geopolitical implications. In these days when the West, led by America, is talking about containing China, or are worried about the possible invasion of Taiwan by China, it is very important that they have a good reading of the effectiveness of Chinese weapon systems. And this um, Indian-Pakistan conflict has given them a big revelation to the world, to the West. It has made military planners in Pentagon to worry and say, if this old system, not even a stealth one, what we call a fourth generation or 4.5 generation plane, with a missile system that is almost hypersonic, is doing this to a modern French system long known to be very reliable, although the Rafale itself hasn't engaged in peer-to-peer adversarial war engagements too. But it creates worry because we all know that the American systems America rely heavily on planes in projecting power. They bring an aircraft carrier to your door front, and they have all this F-35, F-36, F-16, and F-18 Hornets on their planes, and they do a lot of damage to you, as they have done. They did recently to Yemen. But China is not Yemen. China can fight back, and China has had a defensive posture in its military spending. It now is the second largest military spender in the world, with by far, by far more modern and more numerous weapon systems out there in the defense of China. So it really is making people to recalibrate. But even then, beyond the fact that it makes people who want to invade China or do harm to China to worry. China also has been struggling to sell its weapons. There was an event that showed how very important it is to have your weapon systems successful in combat. The Turks have the Barakat drones, and when the Azerbaijanis used these Barakat drones in their war against Armenia, the Nagorno-Karabakh war in about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the success of that weapon system led to an exponential amount of sales, to the extent now that Turkey is now one of the world's biggest arms suppliers in the world because of the success of the Barakat system. The success of this J-10 system has proven that the Chinese weapon systems are indeed efficacious, deadly, and dangerous. And it is them who has, by just this little incident over the course of 45, 48 hours, come to gain the most from this war. Because India, much as they are a big country, an emerging power, they still import a lot of their good, their weapon, their military hardware from Russia. Russia is their biggest supplier of military hardware. And they have been thinking about how they can combat the diversify. And that's why they went to order the Rafale. They ordered the Rafale for very expensive amount of money. They made an order for 26 Rafale systems, which were almost at the unit price of 100 million each. And the J-10C that just did all this damage is less than $40 million each. So when you come and see a war system that can give you quality and better pricing, it makes military defense ministers and defense planners in all the countries of the world to take notice. So this is how it has become a shot in the arm of the Chinese military manufacturers. The Chinese have been trying to break into the global sale of planes and drones and air defense systems, but they have not been as successful as they have been in selling most of their manufactured products. Even though the Chinese lead in the production of drones, they are by miles ahead. Nobody is even close to them. when it comes to commercial drones. Their Wulong systems I've seen. I saw those ones in Saudi Arabia a number of times. I saw them packed and I'm like, oh boy, this is really some vicious looking things. But yet it has, apart from the Gulf countries, not too many countries have bought the Chinese military hardware as they should. Big arms buying countries. Recently, President Donald Trump toured the Middle East, or he still is touring the Middle East as we're talking. And one of the greatest gains for the military industrial complex in America is that President Trump was able to bring huge contracts, military defense contracts for these firms like Lockheed Martins. And these defense firms sell arms. And the markets they sell arms to, no matter how the biggest the market that they have for the Chinese products is that they have not been proven. The F-30 to 35 has been proven. The Patriot missile systems have been proven. The multitudes uh, uh, of vehicles that the industrial complex in military industrial complex in America sells has been proven. Even the Europeans can't seem to be able to sell their weapon systems the way the Americans do, especially as the Ukraine war has exposed many of those their weapon systems to be very, how will I call it, not suitable for the kind of warfare of today. So this war has revealed that China, and it's not just only about when the Chinese produce a new plane, the J-35, the J-20, they produce their bombers and they produce all these Wulong drones. Now we've seen them in combat, and we've like, this is for real. So the Chinese are the biggest winners of this, ironically, this India-Pakistan war. It's not the Indians who, one of the fallout of the war has been that they complain of the negative press they get from the Western media. They complain about the reporting by even their own local reporting. The local press there is not too happy with the government for ending the crisis so early, and we're about the ceasefire. It's not for the Pakistanis whose economy cannot sustain even 3 weeks of war. They were the ones who quickly called for a ceasefire. It was not definitely for the French, whose Dassault manufacturers of the Rafale lost so much. They lost so much of their value. Their stock prices fell dramatically when it came to be known that truly their planes were blown off the air by Chinese made planes. And it's certainly this war has created some worries back in Pentagon, back among the generals in NATO. It was a victory, though, by miles, by many, many degrees for the Chinese, who, even though they did not take part in this war, their weapon systems was tested and their weapon system came out flying. And even if it is mythical, even if it is exaggerated, they won't mind the good press that their weapon systems have given them. We should not forget that the Chinese are leaders in many, many of today's technologies. They are leaders in semiconductors, to a large extent, not the top end semiconductors, but they are the ones, it is in their country that the most amount of semiconductors are produced, especially the legacy semiconductors that are used even in American weapon systems. So that if they today blockade the American arms industry from getting legacy semiconductors from China, it's a problem for everybody. They are leaders in EV, electric vehicles, miles. They lead the world in a fast high speed rail. They lead. So Chinese technology has been proven. They are by far the leaders in modern forms of nuclear fusion and even nuclear fission. Only recently, they found a way to get energy. They built a thorium plant, molten salt plant somewhere in the Gobi Desert. So these are leading technologies, and by themselves, they have a space. a space station now called Tiangong. So nobody should doubt the ability for China to do science. They have had a long before the Americans and the Russians. They already had hypersonic missiles, and they have always said they had it. They have not really used it, but it's a weapon system. They tell people that because for them, their own defense is in defending the first island chains, the second island chain, and the third island chains, and all the alliances that the Americans have around to ring to create a ring of enemies around them. That is their biggest worry. They don't, as the Chinese always say, they don't want another 100 years of 100 years of shame, or as was put on them by the colonial masters long ago. So I think 100 years of humility or something like that. So they really don't want to be seen to lose their sovereignty as they did 100 years ago when they had no navy, they were not military strong because they lagged behind in the industrial revolution. So China won. China is the biggest winner of the skirmish between India and Pakistan. And this victory of China and Chinese weapon system is now the source of worries and new frameworks of strategy and better understanding of these weapon systems. And I dare say that just like how the renminbi and just like how the BYD and all these other EV sellers are pushing into the markets and taking market share from so many legacy car makers, legacy solar panel makers, we may just be entering the era when Chinese planes, war planes, military hardware may now start to replace some of the known markets and known sellers of military hardware in the world. Thank you. I continue to reach out to you all. I will stay on this topic of geopolitics. My discussions may be diverse, but the themes will always be about how the world is changing and how the major players in that changing world and their interests and how those interests leads to the decisions and the actions that they take. In this particular case here now, today's discussion was about India and Pakistan. But the unintended consequence of that um, engagement between these two countries is that it was China that somehow had a spotlight shone on them. I love geopolitics and I always discuss geopolitics, and geopolitics is not domiciled only in one or two topics. It's not only the Ukraine-Russia war. It's not only the Pakistan-India imbroglio or the attempts to contain China. It's diverse. It's how interests clash in many places in Africa, in Asia, in Philippines, in Japan, and in Mexico, in Brazil. We'll bring all this to light as I keep talking about it. If there's any particular topic you want me to discuss, just let me know. I am grateful that a few people are listening to me. We know we will grow the channel. I already have a concurrent channel that is part of a concurrent channel, africansinamerica.com podcast that is growing. We saw that channel grow from a few viewers to subscribers to where it is now, and we know that as we keep putting out this, more interest will follow. And we hope you will subscribe, you will like and share. And if you have comments or if you have insights or if you have your own point of view about today's video, please let me know. If you also have any suggestions about videos you may want me to make, um, let me know. Thank you for being with me to this point, and I look forward to seeing you again. But do remember, geopolitics gives you a better understanding of all the reality that is out there. Thank you. You have a good day.